Okay, everyone, a big Shabbat Shalom to all of you in the river, whether you're joining us here live on the live stream, whether you're watching after the fact. We wish you a Shabbat Shalom wherever you are scattered in the earth. And we pray that his weekly appointed time is rich and brings forth peace that surpasses all understanding. If you are watching this after the fact and you wish to come join us live, we do gather every weekly Shabbat at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you would like to know how to join us, just go over to riverbranchfellowship.com and scroll down on the main homepage, and there'll be a link to subscribe to the weekly newsletter, which when you click on, this little box will pop up, and just pop in your first and last name and email. And every Friday you'll receive the weekly newsletter with any updates, but also with the login details for the Zoom live stream. We would be more than happy for you to come and join us and come say hi to the community and be part of what the Father seems to be doing in our midst. And so here we are, part 3 of the Fear of Elohim series, Love Perfected. We are going to conclude the Fear of Elohim series today. I've got Curtis Reed, the donkey himself, joining me as we finish up on this series, which we both believe is such an integral part of not only this faith, but his whole plan of redemption, which he set forth from before the foundations of the earth and will be brought to its completion at the great and final age. But hopefully people are starting to see how a topic like the fear of Elohim is actually much deeper and richer than previously anticipated. And I hope people are starting to get the sense of the gravity and importance of fear and reverence within our faith journeys, and how much of a part of his desire it really plays.
Yeah, one of the things we don't really consider right now, especially with, our world it's going a bit wonky. And, as we all witness Rome faltering, and a godless world around us faltering, and we're watching silly people do wicked things in positions of authority right around the world. We forget that these people aren't who we are to turn to. They're not who we answer to. What self can get trapped in is pursuit of the darkness. And we're watching all of this stuff go around us, and we forget that we're actually dealing with the weightiest of matters. It's funny, in a lot of the teachings and things that we do, one of the most important teachings that we can give to the community is the series we've just done. There are very few things that are more important than understanding these principles. When we lie on our deathbeds, you're not going to be wondering, who shot Charlie Kirk. You're not going to be wondering who took pot shots at, Donald Trump, or who, did whatever, or what's happened, with, the modern state of Israel and all of these sorts of things. And although we look at these things and we peer into the darkness of man as it unfolds across the world, none of this is going to matter when we ultimately stand before Yeshua. And so what happens is we get distracted. The spiritual squirrels of our lives that run around in the darkness, we pursue them and we think to understand them somehow it matures our faith. And it doesn't. In fact, it can do the opposite. It can actually lead us away from maturing in Messiah. And so as I watch a lot of the focus be on the darkness, what Michael and I, know in our hearts and in our spirit, and where the Ruach has led us, is to share with people the real things that actually matter, the things that are going to matter when it all comes to an end. What we're going to discuss today is love perfected. Some of the greatest desires that we can possibly find in all of Scripture that relate to our Elohim, to our King, to our bridegroom. What's often sad for both of us is that we watch people be focused on the darkness and not in repentance and turn to what is good, what is pure, what is set apart. And so they do journeys of religion, or they do journeys of sensationalism and chasing the darkness and listening to every little thing that silly, wicked people do when they get a chance to sit in the seat of Elohim for but a short period of time in our human minuscule lives. This temporary domain, this Haval existence. Some of you have grown beyond that. Praise Yah for that. Some of you have gone to a place now where you're looking to what is actually matters and what looks greater. Some of you are just starting that journey. Others of you are completely consumed by the darkness still. And we have news for you. The darkness is not going to start looking any less dark, any less silly, any less wicked. As we come to the end of the age, we're not coming to an adversary that is, judging you. This is an adversary whose time is running out as well. And the King is coming. And if we are to look to the schemes of that which does not judge us, and we don't look to the righteousness, his righteousness that will, then we won't understand the importance of a message to finish in this series and like we're doing today. There are very few things that we can talk about that are actually more important. They're just not as sensationalized. Love perfected. We're so busy watching our TV screens and all the weirdness going on around the world. Do we really take the time on the Sabbath to turn to Messiah and understand what his desire actually is? The actual reason for our very existence. We're discussing that today. Some of you will think it's more important to watch a podcast on what another human being is doing in their silly wickedness, and think somehow by figuring that out, that somehow it's going to benefit you on the day we stand before Messiah. And it will not. And yet again, we are distracted from the things that actually matter. Michael and I have the obligation to actually not only state the things we're stating right now, but to share what actually really does matter, what really is good and pure and set apart. And so the importance of understanding the fear of Elohim and how this relates to the struggle we have with self, which is consumed by the darkness, versus true repentance, which will actually turn towards Messiah and repentance. And we will understand and mature in our reverence as a result. And we will stop treating those who we love in spiritually immature ways, in hurtful ways. Many of you have come from journeys where you were simply mistreated by that which had not matured in the very thing we are talking about today, the fear of Elohim. They did not get there, and they somehow found themselves in seats of leadership, teachings, so-called prophets, prophetesses, whatever it is, rabbis, pastors, whatever it is, and they have not grown in the reverence of Messiah, and they hurt you. Shall we be those same people that will go on to hurt others because our emotions now rule us, our so-called knowledge or lack thereof? At what point do we grow to be a people where we will actually have the fear of Elohim and realize that how we are treating one another actually matters? Many of us have come from broken backgrounds and past, and we're trying to speak of a thing called the fear of Elohim, yet we're so hurt and broken that we're consumed by the very self that will continually self-sabotage our journey and our relationship with him and with others who are seeking him. We must overcome this place and grow and mature. It's not about you. It's not about me. It is ultimately actually about him and what he is doing. And as we grow in the reverence of Elohim, as we grow in the fear of Elohim, we have just a chance to get this. And our opportunity is now. Well, we have this chance in the time domain. Praise Yah, he's given us this chance to have this conversation in a real way. You'll look back on your whole faith journey, and the things that are going to really matter are the things like this series. When we lie on our deathbeds, it will be this series. Not all the stuff we chase.
You know, Curtis and I think that, well, we believe, and we'll go as far as saying we know that this topic is so big that it's actually one of eternal consequence. Yes, this time domain is temporary, but this is the opportunity we've been given to figure these things out, to grow in our repentance, to turn to the King and to submit our lives to him, and hopefully grow in reverence of him. Because when this age is all said and done, and you understand the fulfillment of the full appointed times, there will be a judgment seat before Messiah, and that judgment will be final. And as the Apostle Paul would say, we will all stand before Messiah to be judged for what we've done here in this time domain. And so while this time domain is temporary, you can make the statement that the consequences of it are eternal. And the fear of Elohim will be one of the deciding factors in our judgment seat before him. You know, as Messiah would say to Peter, do you love me? Has love been perfected? Because a bride will be selected, and that selection will be final. There will be no adding, there will be no taking away. And so this is why Curtis and I are really, we're not trying to sound serious for the sake of sounding serious and to give this teaching more gravitas. It is what it is. This is what we believe his word is saying. And so this is why we're really trying to highlight the importance and magnitude of the fear and reverence of Elohim. Will it lead us to a place where love will have been perfected? And so through this series, we're not going to dwell on the meanings of fear and reverence. Hopefully by now, people are getting a real understanding of what the biblical definition, not our definition, but the biblical definition of fear and reverence. You know, Curtis and I always encourage people, watch the series in order, because we apply the Hebraic principle of laying a foundation and building upon that foundation, precept upon precept. And so, you know, English definitions, fear, reverence, but it doesn't really give you much, especially as our society grows more and more godless and moves away from the biblical narrative and biblical modus operandi. We've seen how biblically in the Hebrew, yareh and yirah, they're one word, well, two words, essentially encompassing every aspect of the fear of Elohim, whether it be terror, whether it be dread, whether it be reverence, whether it be our character that is operating in a manner that would testify of the reverence of Elohim in our lives. And we saw how what the Greek will do is basically give separate words for the different aspects of the fear of Elohim that is all contained within one word within the Hebrew. So the Hebrew will have one word encompassing all aspects. The Greek will divvy up these aspects within the fear of Elohim and attribute a different word to each one. And so the easy way of thinking about it is that all these Greek words in Hebrew is one word, yareh, or in the verbal form, or yirah in the noun form. And so we see dread, terror. We see a character that will display the fear of Elohim. And we also see the associated behavior that would lead to worship coming from a place of reverence. And this would be, in essence, worshiping him in spirit and truth. And so we're not going to relay the foundation of the definitions of fear. Hopefully by now people understand this. And so as we conclude, And as Curtis and I both said earlier, this is something of eternal consequence. So bear this in the back of your mind. This the fear of Elohim here in this time domain will affect our judgment seat. Keep this in the back of your mind as we conclude today's teaching. And so let's ask this question. Can self disrespect the bridegroom? Because we saw how Yah brought his house back to a place of Phobos, and that Phobos was the necessary foundation so that reverence could be learned. And so while Phobos, or its Hebrew equivalent Chatat, can be in someone's life, can you still be in a place where even where you're starting to grapple with the idea of reverence, can self still come into the picture and disrespect the bridegroom in spite that we may be growing in the fear of Elohim?
So let's put this in an actual perspective of the home. We're all looking for shalom in our home. Yet if we're disrespecting our spouse, so think of it in terms now of bringing it practically into the shadow picture of all of this. It's called your life, and it's your family and your home. Can you disrespect one another with self? Does self raise itself above your spouse, above your wife, above your husband? Does it do these things? And when we look at the whole picture of wanting to have shalom in our home and to operate in such a way, think of it in the sense of the greater picture of redemption. If you truly lost your spouse, or they were taken away, or they were kidnapped, or they were held hostage, or removed from you in your life in some way, shape, or form, would suddenly all the things, all the knowledge that they have or that you have, or money or things, or all of these things that come with the, being in this time domain, if you were able to be reunited with your loved one just for one last time, what would really matter? Would there be truly a reverency for this? Or would you still be going on about what your husband isn't, what he doesn't do, or your wife? The old saying, when it comes to destroying shalom in the home, I don't want to go all day, and men will often say this, to slay dragons and then to come home and have to slay them. Much the same way that a wife is looking to be cherished. And you're away all day and I'm wanting to be cherished, and I come home and I'm still not. At what point do we get where reverence for each other, or Messiah in each other, will actually produce a different form of love, a different witness, a different reality in our home? What does it actually take? Do we have to reach our deathbeds? Do we have to lose a lost one? Do we have to be separated in order to get these points? What if today is the last day you will spend with your loved ones? What would be that which really matters? Most of us live a life, and I'll use the home as the example here, where we're living the fear of man, which ultimately is going to relate to this thing called self that has to die. And we have self at the top. Our children are, generally second, and then of course our spouse might be lucky to get a third in there, and get some lip service at the end. We claim to be of the faith, but this is the order of the home. Circumstances, situations, whatever it might be, is dictating this. But we are in this test to overcome this and go, regardless of the circumstances that we're facing in the home, is Yah truly first? Is my spouse second? Are the children third? And is self last? Now, this is the goal. The goal is that the children are third in the home. But that's third in all of your existence. There could be no greater place than to have Yah first in our lives. There is no greater place that a human being can hold to be second to that, which should be our spouse. No greater place. And the children, they're third. You want to disrespect Yah? You want to disrespect my husband or wife? Then you perhaps aren't in the right home, in the right order. And it's going to take self to die in order to actually implement that. Rome and the silly wickedness we see around the world has completely got this order reversed. We claim to have the faith, and yet we run our homes exactly like Rome. Oh, but I have a little bit of knowledge that you don't. So therefore, I'm fine. Yah's not looking that I actually would be a witness of this. Yah's just looking that I'm aware of it. And is awareness truly what he's seeking? Or is it actually the awareness? Many of us have gone through life. We're coming to the latter stage of the second half of our lives, and we're looking at this right now on the screen. I know some of you are doing this going, actually, I wish I'd gotten this maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Hands up if you can actually admit that you had actually had a chance to think and consider. And in fact, why wasn't that very basic even just taught to us? Just even told to us by the so-called prophets and teachers. Why didn't they just say the simplest of things and matters? Why was I caught in the squirrels of the darkness, pursuing darkness and not that which is set apart? We're in a fallen state. We will lean to the self, children, spouse, Yah side because of the state that we're in. The Ruach is going to get us to the Yah, spouse, children, self side. That's a process of dying. That's a process of repentance. It's a process of maturing and learning the fear of Elohim. And as that grows in our lives, we will treat each other much better. And then they will know us by how we love one another. We stay on the other side, we will spend nothing but division, arguing, making our stupid, silly little statements, acting just like Rome on social media to our own homes. And yet we claim to be of the faith. It doesn't matter what it looks like to us. It matters what it looks like to him when this is finished. So it behooves us to look at this most important subject matter, the fear of Elohim, because it's going to help us look a lot better. It's going to help us get to where he desires.
You know, one of the quickest ways to find out what order is truly in your life is something called trial, crushings, tribulations. I have found that in my life that when you will be brought to certain situations in your life where you will have to make choices, and these choices will very quickly expose what is the order in your life. And we'll delve into this more next week when I do a series on more the practical application of the fear of Elohim. But you can give the reverence of Elohim all the lip service. You can say, yep, my house is in order. And when things are going good, it's easy to have this order in your house. But what about when situations come along and arise and all of a sudden you're having to make decisions where you have to actively choose Yah over your spouse in a moment, where you have to, or maybe choose your spouse over the children, or you're even as simple as putting other people before yourself. It's only when these situations come along that you really get a good barometer of what this order is in your life. And so I believe this is actually one of the reasons why we go through trials and testings. They're there to show us, hey, your house is or isn't in order. And once you know this, what are you going to do about it? But that's more for next week and onwards. We're all the woman, Curtis, according to scripture.
Well, you have a great shadow picture of the woman and the great plan of redemption. Of course, we've said it time and time again. We have a picture of two women. One is Mystery Babylon. She's called the Whore of Babylon. The other is a desired bride. And we have an adversary that is playing in this space that we would choose a wicked woman over a loving bridegroom. And the only way we're going to do that is deception. You know, here in Proverbs 31:3, it says, do not give your strength to women. So think of this. Do not give your strength to Mystery Babylon. Many various forms of religion out there, teachings, movements, garbage, much of it. Not because it doesn't contain elements of truth, but it's always seeking knowledge, never arriving at the understanding of this and what it's all about. Your ways to those who destroy kings destroy the very essence of the way we would view our king. You know, the power of a woman here is astounding in this whole picture. Again, nothing greater that's been created, I believe, in the time domain than the power of a woman. If you reflect the woman's design in the shadow picture in the test, i.e., you're female and on earth right now, you are a shadow picture holding the greatest power known. If that gets misused, it'll bring down kingdoms. You're watching it happen in the Western world right now. The woman's design is being used to bring down Western civilization. It's happening in front of us. Now, men have forfeited their overseeing and spiritual headship of the home, and so it's allowed for this. This is not kidding in the Proverbs. That which would destroy kings. That goes right into the weightiest of spiritual matters, not just the physical shadow picture. Wives that are here in the community on the screen, hopefully we're getting a sense of this, know the power you hold. You can destroy your family and your marriage, all because of self. Husbands, you don't take up your spiritual headship and overseeing, you can allow the opportunity for that to occur. Both of you figure it out together, and you'll have a home of shalom and will honor. The greatest picture and plan of redemption ever known inside the time domain, for which no other religion on earth actually holds the knowledge and understanding of this. The two shall become one. And we'll walk in a space and we'll honor what the actual picture he is desiring is going to be put into play for all of eternity. Why do we stand in front of the king and say, well, I disregarded this in my own shadow picture, but hey, I should be chosen to run yours. I didn't do it in my shadow picture, but hey, I'm fit for the job role and what's to come. Maybe he's just finding out, are you fit? Are you fit to actually be a part of a coming kingdom, the kingdom from heaven? We're going to talk about that today. Are we? If we're all the woman, men, you don't get off the hook here. If we're this picture all to him, are we fit? All knowledge is going to be available to us. Nothing we bring to the picture is going to enlighten him. He doesn't need our understanding of things to run the age to come. He's got it all, and we'll have access to it all. There will be no arguments on any matter of doctrine or understanding of the word, of the faith, and how it's to be implemented and applied. None. So everybody's knowledge on this screen is absolutely not required in the age to come, including yours truly and Michael, who are teaching it. None of us are required to enlighten him. There will be no midrash and doctrinal arguments. There will be no, I know this, they don't. I know better, they don't. Look what little dark squirrel I've discovered. Look what silly, wicked people doing silly, wicked things are up to. Man, I can't wait to tell Yeshua that I learned what they got up to. None of this. We are going to be a witness of something he's desiring and therefore be able to be used and selected as a part of his desire, his dream, his creation, his house, his restoration. We have this little shadow picture to get this right now. And maybe it would be good for all of us, including Michael and I, to think about, are we actually something that can be trusted to run his house? And how can we make that claim if we can't run our own? Aren't you glad you tuned in for the part 3, the fear of Elohim? Try teaching it. And how humbling that actually is, because everything we're saying to you right now, we still have to grow and mature in. Yet we're tasked with the ones that have to say it. Great. Somebody else like to do this teaching? Michael and I can sit back and watch it. You can shoot the messenger on this today, or we can actually see what the messengers have been asked to come to bring to you as a community and a people that I believe are seeking beyond the squirrels of the darkness. And we can actually go down a path that may just lead us to the bridegroom. And we can help each other all get there, because we're all going to need each other. And we're going to need each other to help each other get there. The enemy is not on this screen. It doesn't sit beside you. It doesn't live in your house. If we get this, we hang on and walk with those who do. They're the greatest asset, the greatest gift that could ever be given to you. If you walk with others that get this. And just maybe, we might become a little bit more pleasing. So what is the order of the house? The part of the covenant. What is that order of the house part of this covenant, Michael?
Well, as we're going to see, his kingdom will be unshakable, which means that it will be firm and there will be order. And what does the covenant that was given to us all the way back at Mount Sinai, how does this factor into this? Here's another bold statement for today. The covenant written on stone was never love perfected. I'll repeat that. The covenant written on stone was never love perfected. If it was, we wouldn't read how Yeshua dealt with the Pharisees and the scribes. If it wasn't, we would see plenty of good fruit from the Messianic Hebrew roots. Yet we do not get to say that by and large. And so just knowing of the covenant, or even honoring it in a basic ticking the boxes sense, does not mean that love has been perfected. In fact, I'll go as far as saying it doesn't even mean you have reverence in your life, as we saw from part 2 last week. And so if the covenant written on stone was never love perfected, why give the covenant written on stone in the first place? Hopefully people are starting to understand that phobos, chatat, was needed to be brought back into the picture because reverence was lost along the way. And so how do you bring reverence back in? Well, turns out you have to bring a bit of fear, a bit of dread, a bit of terror. But he's asking us to grow beyond this, to that this covenant goes beyond just being written on stone. Or as we're going to see the Apostle Paul address, that are we moving on from Mount Sinai, or are we still going round and round and round the proverbial mountain in the wilderness? Because unless we grow and mature in the fear of Elohim, that's all we're going to end up doing. And that means that love will not be perfected in our lives which then goes on to mean that can he trust us? And so let's look at the 10 matters. We looked at matters 1 through to 4 last week in part 2, and how these are really the relationship between ourselves and Elohim. But matters 5 to 8 focus on actually how we deal with each other. In Exodus 20, verses 12 through to 15, it says, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that Yah your Elohim is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal." And so we've put this note here: fear without reverence will still produce these being dishonored. You know, let's look at the Messianic Hebrew roots body, or just a religious body by and large today. They're aware of the 10 Commandments. They're aware of them. Some of them may even have it hanging on a wall in their house, giving it the lip service. But yet we see murder going on. Brother cutting down brother, sister cutting down sister. We see the breakdown of the family nucleus, fathers and mothers, husbands, wives not being honored. We see all matter of spiritual and even in bad cases, physical adultery. And yet this is the body. And yet they have an awareness of this covenant. And yet it may even be hanging on their walls. What is missing? Oh, they may have phobos or chatat in place, but you see how they act with one another. And they claim to honor the first 4 matters. I have no other God besides Elohim. Yet they murder each other. Yet there's all kinds of spiritual adultery going on in the household. What's going on? What is being exposed? Goes on.
Yeshua,
Go on.
Yeshua made the point here, and this is what it gets back. He say, "I tell you the truth. If you so just look at another woman," he's making the point. You think this is about stone? You think this is about my desire written on stone was the only reason for this? Or do I need to get this to the heart? I tell you the truth, you're guilty of this violence. You'll think nothing to treat your family and your other brothers and sisters, all for the sake of the circumstance or self or emotion that you're experiencing. You'll think nothing to treat each other in such a manner. This is not a joke. This is actually showing us what is happening in our heart. This is what Messiah was actually saying. I tell you the truth, it hasn't finished at stone. That's just the statement of the desire. Welcome now to the reason for the test. The reason why you're even alive right now. Why I am. Why Michael is. This is what Messiah was actually saying. And the religious system at the time that was charged with the faith had completely and utterly missed what we're discussing today, almost 2,000 years ago. Don't you dare look for those that miss this point to be the authority spiritually in your lives. And Elohim came in person to make that statement. You think this is about the technicality of the Torah? The covenant of which is the stated desire of the Torah? You think that's what this is about? Elohim showed up in the flesh to tell you it wasn't. And the first and foremost, he had to bring that judgment upon that which was the house, where judgment first starts. It's what you're reading in what we call this New Testament, this Brit Hadashah. Should we take that lightly? Should we just disregard that? Is it just something, oh yeah, I was aware. He said, Messiah said this. Or did he actually mean it? They were going to kill him for this, and he knew they would do that. This is how much they didn't get it. Do you know he couldn't have gone to the ancient Tav if they had gotten this? He was pointing out, you don't. And as a result, I'll use the state of your heart to fulfill my plan of redemption. And I'm going to use the true believers in Elohim to do it. Not the silly, wicked people running Rome. They'll just carry it out. I'm going to use you to do it. Do you know how profound that actually is? He didn't even use Rome. He didn't hold them to account. Judgment first started in the house. And that judgment was used to put him to the ancient Tav. And now it's his righteousness and his blood that allows us all back into a restored house. Not our blood, not our knowledge, not our works. There is no way else. There's no other way in. So we get this one last opportunity in this test we call life to get this. That we would be a people that would understand these matters. How does our life stack up to the covenant? This is the desire, his desire given to us in the Torah. Shall we argue over the Levitical laws? Should we focus on all of these things? Or should we understand that these were all there? All of the Torah was given to help us to understand the weightiest of matters, the covenant. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. By the way, that's actually bearing false witness against your brother. In fact, there's a level below that in the Hebrew. You shall not bear false witness against those who are sharing the truth. That's your teachers. That's your father, children, your mother, if they're actually operating in the faith. You shall not bear false witness against authority. Yet we're so glibly we'll do it. In our emotions, our ignorance, or whatever else it is. Oh, but that authority is not as good as my authority, and my authority is the best authority because I'm the best authority to be authorized by. And I'll sit on this throne, and self will rule its judgment upon its spouse, or upon a ministry or an individual trying to serve. You better think very seriously about what this is. Thou shalt not bear false witness. If some of you wish to do that against Michael and I, you better hope that Yah didn't send us to give this message today. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, male servant, female servant, ox or donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. Why would that be there? I don't want you to want things. Is that what this is about?
You know, we've put here coveting is a heart matter, but some of you may remember when I did the desire the series on desire, his heart's desire. In Hebrew, the word for covet is actually it's neither negative nor positive. It just means to desire. Even in the Torah, in the covenant written on stone, it's telling you this is a heart matter. Where does desire begin? Desire begins, it's actually at the nefesh level. It's at the soul level. You don't get to use the Torah and say that this is a series of boxes to tick in the flesh. The covenant, the 10 matters start off with, I am Yah your Elohim, have no other gods besides me, heart matter. And it finishes with, by the way, you make sure that your desires are in check. The issue is not desire itself. The issue is, how will you go about your desire and what will you do to get it? It's exposing whether your desires are in line with him or whether they're in line with self. And again, this is why Yeshua is saying, this is not about whether you actually slept with the woman or not. He's saying you desired it in your heart. The covenant itself written on a stone is saying, I want this to be written on your heart, not just on tablets of stone. But the house of Israel had gotten to such a point that they needed that covenant to be written on stone to remind them of what the covenant was in the first place, so that then it could go onto the heart. And thus would begin the journey of going from fear, dread, terror to reverence. And hopefully that reverence will mature and become something that is love perfected.
Both sides can be guilty of this. So we look at the spiritual journey. So if we look at, our brothers and sisters on the Christian side of the river, and we look at our brothers and sisters on the Judeo side of the river, both can be guilty of missing this whole thing, even though they have the great truths which both hold. But one has truly thrown out the blood that is actually required in this. They have thrown out their Messiah. They rejected him. The other has actually rejected the foundation of their faith and actually who he is, and have made him up now in their own image. Both are guilty. They see partly as a result. They have great truths on both sides of this river. Both hold great truths, but they see partly as a result, according to Scripture. One does not have the Messiah, therefore they are not going to seek them. The other has reinvented him, and therefore they will not seek him. They will make him up. Do you know that you can achieve from both sides the same result? The desired covenant does not occur. You can achieve it from two different ways. Throughout the foundation of the faith, or throughout the one who actually gave it to us. Either way. So those part truths, great truths held by both sides, must come together. They must become echad, so that they can see fully. If not, they will remain to see partly. So we go through the spiritual journey of God, and we've said in the first two parts here, this is the place that Phobos occurs. It was needed to be reestablished. We look at now in part two, where we went through, well, we've got to move on. In the place where we start to understand him as a savior, a father, a king, a high priest, this place of ultimately Messiah, this is where reverence and trust is actually learned. But love perfected is a different position, and it's not one we can actually counterfeit. It's not one we can fake. It's not one we can just say, I have love perfected. This one's going to require the Ruach. This one's going to require work to be done on our actual heart, which the Brit Hadashah and the prophets knew intimately. This is the place that love is perfected. Intimacy. Without it. But the basis for which that intimacy is perfected must come off a place of reverence maturing, and therefore we have a chance to learn trust. This is why I often say trust is not earned. Trust should not just be given. Actual trust of the faith is actually learned, and you can only do that by walking with another, by getting to know another. This is the reason for the betrothal process in the ancient Hebrew wedding model. This is the place where you will start to understand certain things. He's given us this great chance to be a part of a betrothal process because we had a groom that could actually raise from the dead and therefore had a chance to reestablish the house. If he hadn't been raised from the dead, according to Torah, there was no chance at this. But because he could, now we get a second chance, all of us. We get a second chance to grow in reverence, to learn to trust him. And as we learn to trust him and to know him, we start to operate in a place where the sovereignty of man meets the sovereignty of Elohim, and he starts to learn to trust us. Who would have ever thought an Elohim would put a plan of redemption in place where trust was going to become two-way? The place that love, this is the place that love is perfected, requires the Ruach. And there will be those who operate in a space religiously that will end up denying the power of the Ruach. It's possible that we can go through this journey. We all started with the Phobos, but our whole reverence and trust journey can be mucked up with Mystery Babylon. The last one on here, though, is going to require the Ruach for all of us. This one can't be faked. There is no place for Mystery Babylon in it. There's no place for all the silly people doing wicked things in Rome. There is no place for the adversary in the darkness. This is reserved for him and him alone. The Ruach in our heart.
And I'm going to make a statement here as well that, yes, you can be in a place of Phobos and not even get to the reverence and trust, but you can actually get to a place of reverence and trust and love not be perfected. Think a really good example of this would be the angelic realm. The angelic realm have reverence and trust. We get an insight into the angel Gabriel. We see the angel Michael. They have reverence and trust. Oh, they do. But there seems to be this special place reserved for a bridegroom and his bride and them two alone. Think of your marriage covenants, the shadow pictures that point to this. Does love stop being perfected once you say, I do? Or is that actually where love truly begins to be perfected? And so, again, what we're trying to really get through in this series is just because we have reverence and trust does not mean job done for his desire. In 1 John 4, verses 20 and 21, it says, if anyone says, I love Elohim and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love Elohim, who he has not seen. Like, there's no way around this. You can claim to have the first 4 matters in your life, but if matters 5 to 10 are not evident in your life, you're actually a liar. And this commandment we have from him: whoever loves Elohim must also love his brother. It's a requirement. We've got in the note here that agape is impossible without reverence for him and each other. In part 2, we finished off on 1 Peter 1, I think it was, where Peter says, make sure to add to your faith, virtue, and so forth. And he says, add these things, this process that we saw. And the final 3 in that process was godliness, this eusebeia, this character that displays the reverence of Elohim. Once you get that in place, then you get phileo, brotherly affection. And once you get that in place, then you get agape. And so John is simply confirming what Peter said in his epistle. You need to go from reverence to brotherly affection to love. And this is why John says, if you don't have essentially the fear of Elohim, the reverence of Elohim, you do not get to this place of love. You cannot get to this place of love. And so again, this is why we say in this slide, you can be in a place of reverence and trust, but that does not mean that love has been perfected. Because as Peter puts it, the final 3 is reverence. There's godly character, then comes brotherly affection and agape love. And what will it take to take that reverence to grow into love perfected? Well, as Curtis says, that's a work of the Ruach. We can't do it for you. We can help each other in the process, but we can't do it for each other. This is the very nature of the test.
Let's go out in the helicopter a little bit here now and look at the state of the body. Is that true? Can we actually have 30,000 plus denominations, all the factions within Judaism, all the garbage and monkey business we see happening in Hebrew roots and messianic movements? What is the fruit? Let's just look at just John 4, 20, 21. And then look at our lives, our interaction, our spiritual journeys, and ask ourselves, could we actually see what we see and this be in play? We'll be judged well before we get to the Bema seat, the judgment seat of Messiah. Where are we now in this picture? Are we a part of all this division and factions and bearing false witness and being led by our emotions and our little bits of knowledge or whatever we think it is? Do we think that this is some sort of game that he's playing? I tell you, the fruit of religion falls drastically short of what you are reading. So either this is lying to us now in the Brit, or we're falling short of something, and the evidence is glaring like a spotlight onto the house of faith. Oh, but not me. That's everyone else. Okay. That's going to be for Messiah to decide in our lives. Let us hope that we can get to that place where maybe that is what we can say, and maybe, more importantly, the one who will judge us will say that too. But right now, there's no question. We are falling short of just this one verse contained in the Brit Hadashah as a whole religious movement.
And this is why we asked the question, can self disrespect the bridegroom? Because self, for us to hate our brothers or to see the fruit that Curtis is speaking of, the bad fruit that we see in the religious body, you can only do that when self is in the picture. And John is telling us flat out, that's evidence of whether you respect or disrespect the bridegroom. That's the barometer.
What did a master of the Torah have to say? What did a master of the Torah have to say? Well, we all know that Messiah was the Torah made flesh. So he's beyond master. So who are we referring to here then? And we know that there's nobody on earth that was more of a master on earth right now than what we're about to read you. So it's not Messiah, and it's no one currently on the planet. Nobody has a greater expertise than what you're about to read. Not one. Not any of us. Not anybody in Jerusalem. Not anybody claiming to be the house of Judah, or anybody claiming to be of any movement, Christianity, Messianic, Hebrew, nothing. And Messiah was the Torah made flesh. So we're about to read the most advanced perspective of this known, chosen by Elohim for all of human history. Is anybody interested in hearing from this master?
Well, now you phrase it that way, Curtis. Hebrews 12:18-21. We believe that Paul is the author of the Epistle of Hebrews. But listen to what he has to say. For you have not come to a mountain that is touched by a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and a tempest, and the sound of a shofar and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoken to them. For they could not endure the order that was given. If even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moshe said, I tremble with fear. So Paul is clearly speaking of the Mount Sinai event where, you know, as we covered in part 2 and part 1, that Mount Sinai was the place where Phobos was brought back into the picture. Reverence was lost. How do we bring reverence back into the picture? Well, we need to go back to Phobos. Terrifying. The word there is ekphos. Phobos. So it's Phobos on another level. I mean, Phobos is already the highest level of terror. And here, this is saying Phobos, literally frightened out of one's wits, stricken with terror, exceedingly frightened, terrified. It was that terrifying that even Moshe said, I tremble with fear, with Phobos. And so this is the place where Phobos was brought back into the picture. But look at what Paul is saying. Like, remember the context that Messiah has fulfilled the spring appointed times. Okay, we're moving forward from this place. We're moving forward from the proverbial Mount Sinai. And this is what Paul is saying, essentially. Hopefully, we've moved on from Mount Sinai. Did the house of Israel in the wilderness remain around Mount Sinai for about 40 years? But was that their final resting place? No. They had to move on from Mount Sinai to go to the promised land. Okay? This move forward. But what had to occur in the house at the heart level for them to even be able to be moved on from Mount Sinai to the promised land? We believe that Phobos had to mature to a place of reverence. Elohim had to know he could trust his house to even be able to entrust them with the promised land. It goes on. But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living Elohim, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering. I love the allusion to the appointed times there. To the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to Elohim, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect. The Greek there for perfect is the equivalent of the Hebrew word tamim, brought to full maturity, perfected and matured through trials and tribulation and by the crushing of their lives. And to Yeshua, the mediator of a new or renewed covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks of a better word than the blood of Abel. Paul is essentially saying, guys, we need to move on from Mount Sinai, not do away with it, but again, Hebrew understanding, the foundation has been put in place, now build upon it, let Phobos go to reverence, let it go from stone onto the heart so that we can move forward into the promised land. And elsewhere in the book of Hebrews, it would use the very typology of entering into the promised land as a typology of entering into the kingdom from heaven. Paul is saying you cannot get here unless you move on. Not do away with it, but build upon it and grow and mature. This is the very essence of the faith. And so are we still in Phobos, going round and round the proverbial Mount Sinai? Or is that Phobos developing into reverence? And hopefully, now look at what he's saying, Mount Zion, the heavenly Jerusalem. If you read in the book of Revelation, not everybody in the house gets to enter the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem can only be entered by the overcomer. There's bridal position. And so you have to go from this place of Phobos to reverence, but then that reverence has to go to love perfected for this statement to be true. And he leads up to this. Therefore, that therefore is saying it's on the foundation of what was just said. If you've moved from Mount Sinai to the heavenly Jerusalem, if you've gone to love perfected, then therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And thus let us offer to Elohim acceptable worship with reverence and with awe. For our Elohim is a consuming fire. Now, there is so much to unpack in this verse. So we're going to take a little pause here because what Paul is saying, again, Paul was difficult to understand. And even in the Greek, you're seeing some really interesting things here. So everyone, get your thinking caps on, because we're going to notice here, okay, there's reverence and there's awe. Now, these are two separate Greek words from those that we've already encountered. Okay. And this is why we're going to dedicate a little bit of time and really labor this a little bit, because there's so much encaptured within this. Now, before we dig into the meanings of these words, reverence and awe, the eidos and the eulabeia, understand, he says, therefore let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom. What's very interesting is that the word here for receiving, in the Greek, it's lambano. Lambano is the root word of eulabeia here, or. There's actually, even the Greek is capturing a little bit of wordplay that Curtis and I believe would have been occurring in the Hebrew as well. So if you understand that receiving, the word lambano is the root word of awe, okay, what you can actually infer, even from the Greek, is that if you do not have reverence and awe, if you haven't gone to this place of love perfected from reverence, can you even receive an unshakable kingdom? Think about, this is so rich. Who is the authority of the kingdom given to? It's given to those that overcome. It's given to the bridal position where love has been perfected. This is the inheritance that Scripture speaks of, that the meek shall inherit the earth. Those that have been humbled, those that have gone through the crushings of life and that have learned to see the good in their crushings, and that has matured them and not only have they got the reverence and the awe, but that love has been perfected. Paul is saying here, you cannot receive that authority if you don't have reverence and awe in your life. And we haven't even begun to look at these Greek words.
Think about what we've given you with the actual picture, while we were showing you the chart on the spiritual journey the way we were. We're not just making this up. We're trying to give you a modern translation and picture and find the simplicity of what Paul was talking about. And he's actually laying this out now in his terms, and this is being captured and being given to us in the Greek. But again, this was originally all set in a Hebraic mindset and words. And so we're trying to get you the picture. He's difficult enough to understand almost 2,000 years ago. Now we're in the Greek, now we're in the English. The English is all over the place. And we're all sitting here almost 2,000 years later reading the English, making it all up in our minds. And we actually take this back and go, what was Paul actually saying? He's a master at the Torah. And the Brit Hadashah doesn't exist yet. And he's talking all about the plan of redemption and the desire of Elohim. So we got something very interesting to go on. This brother could quote you the book of Devarim verbatim. This is a very serious matter, and he's laying it out. And so we're trying to break this down and simplify it to us in our modern Western English terms to tell you this is what he's actually saying.
Okay, so thinking caps on, everyone. We're going to look at these words, eidos for reverence and eulabeia for awe. Okay, these are rich words, very rich words. So, and then what we're going to do once we've broken down these words, we're going to reread this verse again with the understanding that the Greek is able to give us. Okay, so reverence, the word there was eidos. A sense of shame or honor, modesty, bashfulness, reverence, regard for others, respect. Now, the root word of eidos is Ado. Now, Ado can mean two things. It can mean to see, and it can mean to know. Now, let's look at seeing. To perceive with the eyes and or senses, to discern. So think having eyes to see and ears to hear, to turn the eyes, the mind, the attention to anything. Look at that. To examine and inspect, to behold, to experience any state or condition. Think of experiencing the fallen state so that we can see something, i.e. the test. Look at this, to have an interview with, to visit, that's got judgment overtones now. To see something. But it can also mean to know something. So you can see something because you know it intimately well, right? To get knowledge of, to understand, to perceive, to have regard. Look at this, to cherish. So now it's got bridal overtones. And so essentially, remember that Eidos, reverence, its root meanings means to be able to see and to know something. Does he know us? Do we know him? Do we have eyes to see and ears to hear? Because if we don't, essentially what we're saying and what we believe the Greek is saying, without reverence, we will not have eyes to see and ears to hear. If someone doesn't have the fear of Elohim in their lives, do not be surprised that, again, the warnings of Paul, always learning, but never coming to the knowledge of the truth. They have the scriptures, but they cannot actually discern or see them. As Peter's warning, people would twist the words of Paul as they do the other writings, the scriptures, and he's referring to the Tanakh there. Remember what we covered last week regarding Proverbs 1:5-7, that wisdom and the fear of Elohim is the beginning of knowledge. It's the beginning of wisdom. And that wisdom will help us understand the parables of the kingdom from heaven. If you do not have the fear of Elohim in your life, you will not have eyes to see and ears to hear, even the parables of the kingdom. And if you don't understand the parables, can you be trusted to rule and govern it? And so this is why we said in the previous slide, you cannot receive the kingdom if you do not have the fear of Elohim. This is not a saved or this is not saved or unsaved. This is bride versus not bride, essentially. Are you an overcomer? And so that's the reverence side of the Greek. If you thought that was rich and deep, wait till you see this word.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting from a perspective of, think about when Messiah was with the disciples and said, you speak to us in parables. Why? And he's making a real statement. There is something the religious system will not understand. And there's something that they will, but they don't know why they understand the parables or why they're listening to it. But they had been growing in discipleship in a place of establishing, they had gone from phobos to reverence. They were actually walking with him. They were learning to trust him. They were starting to identify who he actually was. And so they were suddenly in a place where their eyes could see and their ears could hear. So he could speak to them in a manner which now they would start to understand. Reverence was maturing. They finally could hear and see. The religious system wasn't, yet it had way more knowledge in the sense of the technical understanding of the Torah and the prophets. Again, there's no New Testament at this time. All the word for correction and reproof is profitable for correction, reproof, and understanding. The only thing they have is the Torah and the prophets. They're not running around with New Testaments. So they must be looking now to the Torah and the covenant itself and how the prophets were relaying this over the time span of recording the bad behavior of the house of Israel. And they're actually looking at this. And they're now doing it in hindsight with Messiah there, who's about to fulfill the first part of the great plan of redemption, the appointed times. And he's about to do this. And so they're now looking at this and now entering into this place. And he's able to speak to them in parables because it's from the place of reverence. It was maturing. We will not understand unless this matures. And so he could speak the kingdom, the parables from the kingdom from heaven. He could start to bring this into play. He was unable to do that with the religious system, regardless of the amount of knowledge that they had, which was great, which at that time Paul was in. And he was going to have to go through a lot to have his eyes opened. Imagine being a master of the Torah and you've got to go through a Damascus Road experience. Why? Why would that be needed with that level of knowledge and understanding? These are things we have to consider. Shall we seek where Paul was at this time to understand the kingdom from heaven? Or should we listen to him in Hebrews, like we're trying to go over right now, when reverence had matured in him? Anybody before this time would have looked at the system and said, oh, they have mature reverence. If you were just to try and weigh it up with no understanding on all this, yet in Elohim's mind, you don't fear me, Paul. We're going to have to do some work here. And now he's speaking from the other side. I suggest we listen to this master of Torah, who's now had his eyes and ears opened. All right?
All right. So again, we're to receive this kingdom with reverence and awe. So eulabia, again, it's reverence, veneration, fairly easy to understand. This is the reverence part of the fear of Elohim. The root word of eulabia is eulabes, taking hold with a proper grasp, carefully and surely, reverencing Elohim. So the idea is that because you reverence something, you when you take it, you treat it with caution or you treat it with honor. You don't just grab it and manhandle it. It's like, no, this is to be respected. Think of discernment or the laying on of hands actually within discipleship. Now, the root word of eulabes is lambano, which is to take. Now, again, this in the Greek, it has a huge semantic range. So it can mean to take, to lay hold of, to take. But look at this, to carry away without the notion of violence, to take what is one's own, to associate with oneself as companion. So companionship, discipleship starts to come into this. To strive to obtain, to take a thing due or collect, to receive what is offered, to receive a person. I like this, to regard anyone's power or rank. So authority now is starting to come into this. Do not overreach for something that your rank does not allow almost. To choose, to select. So now think bridal selection in this. To prove anything. You take it because it has been proven. To make a trial of, to experience. Now, this taking is the root word of eulabia. Hopefully people are beginning to understand that there's a lot of bridal connotations. There's authority in this, that there's having eyes to see, having ears to hear. So now that we understand all of this, or that we've got an awareness of this, let's reread this. Therefore,
just before we do, let us actually just take into account here the lambano aspect of this, because this is what it's drilling down to. And the Greek is trying to capture what was more evident Hebraically. The lambano here is literally telling you there's a reason for the test. Your life. and it's directly linked to his desire, but it's at the hidden, the great pearl of price level. It's literally dig down to understand that this is, your test is required because I'm needing to see something which can take hold of something, and trust and reverence is absolutely required for this. This is really fascinating. Paul is screaming bridal governance at the desire of Elohim level. The Greek is literally capturing this.
Think of it this way. Curtis often jokes about bridezilla, you know, the generally more so on the Christian side, you know, it's all about the bride, and I will take that authority and I deserve it, yet there's no reverence. This is the opposite of what's actually being shown in the Greek. The bride of Messiah, she will take hold of that, but she will do it from a place of repentance and reverence and trust. This is what the Greek is really saying, and this is what Curtis is really trying to bring out of this. And how would Elohim know this if it wasn't for the test? Are we starting to understand now maybe why even the need for the fallen state? Because if you from a fallen place, if you can take hold of this with reverence, how much more so from a glorified state? And this is what Paul, as Curtis was saying, this is what Paul is screaming here. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving, lambano, for taking hold of, for taking something. What is that? A kingdom that cannot be shaken. The symbol of that would be the scepter, the assured scepter, the rod of Elohim. Elohim will have a rod, and he will give that rod to his bridal governance, as is said in the book of Revelation. To he who overcomes, he shall rule the nations with what? A rod. And so she will take that rod with, thus let us offer to Elohim acceptable worship with reverence and awe. The bride of Messiah will take that rod from a place of reverence. What the Greek captured in reverence was that having eyes to see and ears to hear. You cannot have that without reverence. Or you will not be able to take hold of something unless you have the reverence of Elohim. Because if you don't have the reverence of Elohim, you're going to take it in a usurping fashion. And Elohim will not have a usurping bride sit on his throne. All of this is captured in the Greek. And this verse was in the context of, have we moved on from Mount Sinai to the heavenly Jerusalem? Because if we want to move on from Mount Sinai to the heavenly Jerusalem, we need to go from phobos to reverence to perfected love. The covenant needs to go from stone to written on our heart. And from that place, trust needs to be learned two ways. Only then can we receive or take hold of that his scepter and wield it in a place that's from reverence, repentance, and respect.
Now, think of the Torah in the sense of how it can never be obedience for obedience sake. It's not the goal. Even Messiah said, well, do as the Pharisees do, in the sense of their basic obedience. But think about what he was saying. I got to get you beyond this, because if the goal was pure obedience, he could achieve obedience at phobos level. Again, we can't stress this enough. Why did he require this development, this growth? Literally, Paul is revealing it, that there can be an assured scepter. The English doesn't capture, they'll rule with a rod of iron. We get all this weird connotations. It's so lacking in understanding what this is. A kingdom that actually has a ruling that is assured. How is it assured? Its reverence has matured. That is what is acceptable worship. It's gone far beyond obedience. This was never obedience for obedience sake, and obedience was never on the stand. Again, how is he going to achieve it? I can do it through phobos, or I can do it through love perfected. What sits between those two? Maturing in reverence. And Paul laid it all out here in Hebrews. And he managed to do it, Michael, in
Greek.
8 verses as recorded in the Greek. So he was a master. He was much better at it than Michael and I. We're having to go through all of this teaching to try and get this point across. But it's only for the sake of the body that we understand this. They knew this. Paul knew this. What we're talking about today, like that. Bang, 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 bang. Completely revealed, completely understood, but not from the position of the Pharisee of Pharisees, from the position of post Damascus Road experience and eyes and ears being opened, and him having to go through the phobos of the Damascus Road to then go through his reverence journey, which many believe was up to 3 years, and then to come out and to be used to give the bridal message. Interesting now, isn't it? How easy the Brit will read and how we should now understand the journey of Paul. The Apostle Paul couldn't cheat this process. And sure enough, he became an authority to actually tell us in Hebrews, and then gave us the book of Ephesians that gave him the authority to be able to speak on the great mystery revealed. Isn't it incredible how this is actually laid out in the Brit and why he was used? He had to live this, literally, all from a place of knowledge much greater than any of us or anyone on the earth today. Fascinating. You mean that much knowledge still had to go through this?
Curtis, does perfect love cast out all fear?
Notice the thing there. Perfect love cast out all fear. This desired goal, which we just reflected that the Apostle Paul had labored in the Brit Hadashah. Perfect love. Think of that now.
All maturity.
Yeah. Think about what it's actually saying. Because if we just have this airy-fairy concept of love, love just casts out all fear. Do you know you could end up giving your trust to people you shouldn't? And then you could end up getting hurt because you think everybody's just operating in love. Whatever love is, put 1,000 of us in the same room and tell them to all give your definition of love, and then you wonder why we're in the mess we're in. Don't you think that maybe we need to understand his understanding of love? Because if that's what's going to cast out fear, phobos, then we really want to understand this. This love perfected is actually going to achieve something, and it's a requirement for the bridal governance. His desire is that we would get there, that we mature. It's a bridegroom, the way he puts it, a bridegroom desiring his bride. That's the closest we have in the physical shadow picture. He's desiring this so that he can have something to fulfill his great goal, his great dream, and his desire. But it's going to require the very thing Paul labored in Hebrews, the very thing we're laboring in this final teaching of the series. But by this is love perfected with us. So in 1 John, now we go back to John, who so easily just laid out this whole picture in a few verses. We go read on further on now. Love perfected with us so that we may have confidence before the day of judgment. What's the confidence? I know I'm saved by the great internal insurance policy. And now I can just make them up in my own mind and throw away the front of the book? Is that my confidence? Or is the actual confidence something's matured? The same confidence that if you see even in the marriage shadow picture, my bride has the confidence to approach me because she trusts me. See, she can come and bring to me that which I may not want to even hear. Someone else might be very weary to say the very thing that she has no problem to say. She'll tell me in 2 seconds. Utter trust or love perfected. But somebody else charged with that same task to speak to me with that information in a way that I need to hear may be terrified to say the same thing that she would say over making a cup of coffee. There's a big difference in the confidence going on. Do you see the point? Now, we're just breaking this down into the plain application of this. Confidence before the day of judgment. Now, think of this. He's bringing it now to the day of judgment. My goodness. Is it possible that you could get to a place of love that is perfected at the level that is matured through reverence and trust to the level of love perfected that even the day of judgment is now an embrace? Think of that. That may not be the case according to Scripture for all that stand before the judgment seat of Messiah. Some are having a cup of coffee in that moment and some are not. And this is a very different position for a whole house that has been purchased by his blood. This isn't a matter of saved, unsaved. This is a matter of judgment. And it's being made very clear here. Because if he is also we are in this world, there is no fear, phobos in love. In this love that's being talked about, there is no phobos left. We're at the judgment seat and there's no phobos? Wait a minute, this is a little different, isn't it, Michael, from Mount Sinai? There's a little something different going on here. Because Sinai's not even near this. And apparently, there's a day of judgment where there's not phobos. How could that happen? But perfect love casts out all fear. Interesting, casts out phobos. For phobos has to do with punishment. Yet we know that the judgment seat of Messiah is a rewards judgment. This is very interesting. Yes, there will be those who suffer loss and those who will suffer reward. For whoever fears has not been perfected in love. This is interesting. If somebody who has won the race is going up to the podium before the judges, are they sitting there celebrating that fact, or are they really worried that the judges may not have seen them win the race? Think of the plain application of this. Their arms are in the air. They know. And this is why Paul could finish in this place in his walk. I go to receive my Christ. He finished in a place he most certainly did not start. This incredible journey of this Apostle Paul, entrusted to us to be a part of and charged with giving much of us the testament of the faith of what the prophets were saying that goes right back to a covenant matter. This is what he was charged with. What we call the New Testament is a testament of what the whole thing is about. And how sad it is to see Christians start at just the birth of the fulfillment of the whole foundation of our faith. And it then leads them to chasing all sorts of squirrels everywhere in the religious quagmire and circus. Much the same way, it is sad to see that those who have the foundation of the faith reject the very one that's going to allow this that you're reading on this screen right now to be able to come before him in perfect love. Wow.
Hebrews, Paul picks up on the same thing that John was just speaking of. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace or favor, that we may receive mercy and find grace or favor to help in time of need. You know, when you backtrack the Greek to its Hebrew, you'll find confidence, but you'll also find trust. Do you trust to draw near or to the day of judgment? Confidence here in the Greek, parasia, freedom in speaking, unreservedness in speech, openly, frankly. Like, it's this idea of, I will say what I need to say and I will say it plainly. There's no need to tread on eggshells. You know, my bride, she will speak very plainly to me, very plainly, even if that's in a time where maybe I need reproof, okay? But she will confidently, unreservedly say what needs to be said. So, as Curtis was saying, someone else may not have that courage to do so. It may be a very different experience for them. You mean to say that you can get to such a place that you can speak frankly and openly to Elohim? Look, I'll use myself as the example, and I know that we've all been guilty of this, but who here is guilty of approaching Elohim in prayer with your opening fluff? Oh, I praise you. Oh, I repent. Oh, what you're actually doing is treading on eggshells around him. That's actually exposing that there's still phobos in play. But who here has had that moment in their faith where all the fluff disappears and you just come boldly and you say, Elohim, this is where I'm at. Now we're starting to see that confidence, that freedom in speaking, unreservedness in speech. This also reminds me of what the disciples were saying of Yeshua. Now you speak plainly and not in riddles. But why, again, Yeshua was able to speak to them openly. Why? Because they'd grown in reverence. He didn't have to speak in parables. You know, anyway.
Does love perfected require trust? So it's not us that our righteousness or anything else that allows this position of confidence, of relationship. In fact, we have to overcome our phobos position. Now, we're really in trouble if we don't have the phobos of Elohim. We're just gone. We're in the, in that situation where there is no fear of Elohim, and therefore you'll be silly people doing silly, wicked things. Once you have that phobos, then we now need to mature beyond it. So we get to that place where we actually can come before him. Moshe had to go through this, didn't he? Everybody's setting him up there, and poor Moshe had to learn the place of trust with this Elohim who's parting Red Seas, giving plagues, shaking a mountain, thunderous, but think about what Moshe was going through. If Moshe didn't overcome phobos, he wasn't going back up that mountain, especially after the golden calf incident. He's got to explain what's going on. And then he would go before him, and he was learning and developing this whole place. You're actually seeing this whole thing play through Moshe, right at the time of the actual foundation of the faith being given to the whole house of Israel. And so we've seen this pattern over and over again. All the prophets went through it, and so on and so on. And so we look at this and we say, okay, so what did they know? What did the prophets speak of? You think of Elijah dealing with his servant and whatnot. His servant's fallen into the fear of man in this situation. Elijah's just quite frankly, oh, look, can you please just show him? We're okay. One is fearful of the situation that's unfolding with man. The other is walking in a very different place. And in fact, speaks it, at least as recorded in scripture, in a very confident manner. Would you please show him? That sounds to me something like my wife would say to me over a cup of coffee, where somebody else will be showing. I've literally, when we say it all the time, and we'll see this with parents, with their children, right? Okay, we got to get this message through to dad. Okay, go tell mom and get mom to say it. Okay, this is the shadow picture of what we're actually seeing. The children do not have the place that mom has. Or let's say vice versa. They might go, Dad, can you go deal with mom? You will see these things constantly in the shadow picture. Why did he give it to us? He's trying to give us this much greater picture. We must know it. There is a place for children to have, at a certain stage in their life, the phobos of dad.
or mom. Like that's a healthy thing. But as they mature and grow older and whatnot, they should finish as adults where they're confidently coming before mom and dad with matters of life. You see, the whole creation picture has actually established this if we will see it. And he's telling us, I want you to go through this journey with me. But not everyone's going to make it. Most people that are caught up with knowledge and seeking and movements and religious existence and everything else, they're not even interested in this message. They're interested in the knowledge of it, but they're not interested in the actual message. Can we reach the level that Paul was so desperately proclaiming to come boldly before this? And to do that, we must learn reverence, because guess what he's saying? You don't get to do this disrespectfully. Remember how we started off with the teaching today? Can we disrespect the bridegroom? You mean we can come confident before him and not be disrespectful? Yes. He doesn't want us to come disrespectfully before him. That's not what Paul said. Paul said with confidence. Well, the only thing that can be in this way, if we're still going to do it respectfully, most certainly Phobos would do that. So how do I do it with confidence, but it's no longer Phobos? And this is what's being demonstrated here. So Michael, back to Phobos in the garden. What did we see going on here? Because something interesting happens.
Yeah, we're back to the fall of man here. And so there's been the whole thing of partaking of the fruit. And in Genesis 3:9-10, it says, Yah Elohim called to the man and said to him, where are you? And he said, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid. He was back to a place of Phobos. His fallen state basically zeroed him at Phobos, because I was naked and I hid myself. And so what's interesting is not only was he afraid, but if you're hiding for yourself from someone, is there a lack of trust maybe, Curtis?
Something's been suddenly lost. He was in a place of walking and talking with Elohim according to the word. According to Torah, something is suddenly lost. Something's exposed, and now it's created an unhealthy fear suddenly that's affecting trust. He's in a different space. He's naked. It says, because I was naked. Whoa, 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 whoa. So his ability now, or his position, has changed. Well, this is going to need to be restored, because you can't be in the place that Adam is here right now if trust is still in this picture from a state of being naked. You mean that we may have to learn trust from the naked place? Interesting. Adam hadn't learned that yet. We're actually all being exposed and charged with our test to come boldly before him naked? Whoa.
But Curtis, we get a shadow picture of this in marriage. Do we not?
We most certainly do.
Like, I'm not trying to be graphic here, but why would Elohim put that in the shadow picture? And, in fact, let's take this a little bit further. We've put here that love hadn't been perfected at this stage. Like, again, why the need for the fall? Because Adam had knowledge, he had understanding, but the question we're asking here really is, had Adam's love been perfected prior to the fall? Could it be perfected prior to the fall? That's an interesting question to ask, especially in regards to the need for the test.
This is where we learn truly his ways are not our ways. There's something very interesting being stated here in the garden. Of course, the garden is a big subject and a whole bunch of matters. And then, of course, what were the motivations or reasons for why we see what went down? But we're just looking at it purely from this place. Is it possible that Adam and Eve, had not had love perfected, even though they were in a glorified state. Why would Elohim allow this all to go down? What was it that they were missing? The great riddle. What was it that they didn't have? Did they know perfect love? They may have had the trust. They may have had the reverence. They may have had this understanding of their God. But was it at the level that Elohim desired? And then how are you going to go about actually getting that in a true way? How are you going to actually get love perfected that's two-way in a true intimacy? This is where his ways, when it says his ways are not our ways, they're really not. There is mysteries here at play that are far beyond our little human religious mindsets. It's how he viewed Adam and Eve that mattered, not how we do thousands of years later in our convoluted religious learnings. How did Elohim view them before the fall? And is it possible that it was not a complete work yet, or a perfected work? And what work was that? Is it possible it could relate to the very essence of love itself?
Matthew 25, verses 24 to 26. This is the parable of the talents. Now we know what happens with the good servants, the faithful and trustworthy servants. They were given rewards, okay? But he who had also received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I had phobos. I was afraid. He remained at the phobos level, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. His phobos not maturing, when you understand that the talents of the people in your life, you mean that he actually hurt other people because of his fear? Oh, hurt people go on to hurt people. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I've not sown and gather where I have scattered no seed. Notice the contrast here. The wicked, lazy servant, one of his issues was that he didn't grow past the place of phobos. He just remained wandering around the proverbial Mount Sinai. It did not mature. But look at the contrast. What was said to the good servants? You, well done, good and faithful or trustworthy, depending on your translation. Because they had grown past phobos, Elohim had learned to trust them, and therefore he's rewarding them with enter into the joy of your master. In fact, the Luke account in the parable of the minas flat out tells you, be in charge over 10 cities or 5 cities. Authority is given because they were shown trustworthy in the little, but the wicked, slothful servant, look at that, fear, phobos. It hadn't matured. And so this is why we put the title here, can a lack of trust because of phobos not maturing to reverence, can it actually lead to outer darkness? Because what was said also to the wicked, lazy servant? Throw him out to the outer darkness. This is not a saved or unsaved statement. This is rewards and losses. He might as well be saying, you're not welcome to the wedding feast.
Let's read this in an even plainer way. I was afraid of other people. I was afraid of the government. I was afraid of the devil. I was afraid of everything, self. So I went and hid your talent. Your fear is misplaced. It's self, and this is where we get back to the beginning of this particular part. If self is sitting on this throne, it's going to rule your decisions. And what he's saying is, Master, I didn't see your work going on anywhere around here. But I knew that you can reap where I've not sown seed and gather where I've scattered. So this is what the master is saying. You know I do this. But your phobos made the decisions. Not your reverence, not your trust. Interesting. You mean our Phobos can take us out of play? If we don't mature in this place, we can make decisions that actually remove us from servitude with our family, our friends, our work colleagues, the world around us, the body. Yep. Was love perfected displayed on the ancient Tav or cross? So was this love perfected? Not just love in our Western little emotional connotations. Was love perfected displayed on the ancient Tav or cross, for those who don't know that the Tav is the last letter of the ancient Hebrew alphabet. Love perfected give us their life for another. It is finished. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends. Love perfected will cause you to love others more than self. This is being given, in the sense here, the greater is the megas in the Greek, the external form or sensible appearance of things, of persons, in particular of space and dimensions and aspects. I want to say this here, that there's an indication here that even the Greek is capturing, that there is a love dimensionally above our basic emotions, how we see something that is greater, that we need to understand. And the example that's being given that we see in the shadow picture is no greater dimensional love, or this perfected love, than that which would lay down his life for his friends or others. And you get now into who's my brother's keeper? Who's doing this? I'm looking at the state of religion right now, and I'm going, not only are they not willing to lay down their life for one another, they're not even willing to lay down their self-emotional reaction for another. Never mind their lives. And we get nothing but all this silly contentious and arguments and manifesting and blurting out on social media and reacting. And you know, honestly, I can't even imagine what social media is going to look like for people when they're standing at the judgment seat and you can just see your posts for the last 20 years and just see what this looks like. Oh, you're worried about the government seeing it. We need to be worried about the king seeing it. Goodness gracious. Where is our fear? Big Brother's watching us. I'm not worried about Big Brother. They need to see a non-wicked servant actually not have this hidden in the ground. It would actually be good for the government to read my posts, or it should be. The one I'm actually worried about is the king reading them. Could it be misplaced? And if this doesn't get right, we're going to be worried about Big Brother instead of Bema Seat of Messiah. This has got to change. And the example being given here, the greatest way I can reflect this to you, and this is the wisdom contained here by John, the greatest way I can say this is, okay, your physical life. Can you get this? Because this is pointing to a dimensional love, something outside our dimension that is being perfected so that we can go back out of this time domain into something. And this was demonstrated by him personally on the ancient Tav, killed by his own servants of the house. I am going to demonstrate this so fundamentally and so literally to you that you may get this. I'm going to take full responsibility, accountability, and consequence for creating you and all that is going on and all that you will experience. I personally will show you this. It is the closest I can get you in the time domain to this dimensional aspect of perfect love. And the Greek is capturing it here in the word greater. It's called megas. Something greater, external, outside this dimension. And your only link, this thread to understanding this is what he's going to actually do. Was perfected love demonstrated on the ancient Tav? You better believe it, but we better understand what perfected love is. And it's not our feelings. There's something greater than this.
This respect from those close to us as part of Messiah displaying what this greater love, this megas love that transcends the time domain itself. We get some really interesting prophecies regarding how this would go down, and especially of those around him. In Psalm 41:9, it says, even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted his heel against me. Now, we understand this to be a prophecy of Judas's betrayal of Messiah. But the Hebrew captures some really interesting nuggets with when you look at the Hebrew. The English calls it my close friend. In Hebrew, it says Ish Shlomi. It literally means man of my peace. Like, this is meant to be a man of peace, which would make sense, you know, when Yeshua would send them out 2 by 2 and say, if you find a son of peace. But in whom I trusted, batach, here, to trust in, to have confidence in, to be bold, to cause the trust. Like, Yeshua trusted this individual. And this individual lifted his heel against me. Now, the word lift here, gadal, it captures this idea of becoming great or important, to promote, to make powerful. But look at this, to magnify oneself. What the Hebrew is capturing is that Judas actually usurped Messiah in his heart. He made himself greater than Messiah in his heart. Now, what did we just cover? That no greater love than this, than you lay down your life for your brother, for your sister. Judas is displaying the complete opposite here. He's displaying, not only did he not lay down his life, he lifted himself up against Messiah. And the trust was broken at the intimate level. We've put here the great Judas betrayal. Judas blew the bridal test. We may actually be seeing the first case of weeping and gnashing of teeth. We know that those who do not make it to the wedding feast, who are thrown out to the outer darkness, weep and gnash their teeth. Has anyone ever asked themselves, why did Judas go to the length of actually topping himself, taking his own life when he realized what he'd done? What if it was as powerful as he realized? Remember what the statement we made at the beginning of the teaching. This time domain is temporary, but what comes out of it will have eternal consequence, especially in regards to the fear and reverence of Elohim and whether love has been perfected. What if Judas knew he blew his test? He knew where he would end up. Not in that wedding feast.
Think of the covenant now being written on our hearts. Peter's was exposed. He actually was in the Talmudim, or the discipleship of Messiah himself. Yet he's discovering, oh my goodness, I've blown it. Let's think about how we treat one another. Are we blowing the bridal test? Are we willing to portray one another? Are we willing to do this in our own homes, with our spouse, with our children, or with our brothers and sisters in the faith, all because we have an emotional reaction or we think we have a little bit of knowledge? What is it we're actually seeing? Judas realized, and because he realized this truth from a place of self, he took self into his own hands. And he finished it by playing Elohim, took his own life. He'd never moved past. He never matured in this true reverence. And he blew it. And he knew it. He made a mistake, though, by playing Elohim. Peter didn't. Peter blew it in the sense of denial. Peter went on to repent. You see, Peter could have taken matters into his own hands as well and played Elohim. Peter didn't blow the bridal test. This incredible example of two ways we can go, both were learning the place of reverence. One failed, and one would eventually move on to perfected love. All who see me mock me. Reading from Psalm 22, 7-8. They make mouths at me, they wag their heads. He trusts in Yah. Galal. Look at this. In Yah, let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. It's to delight, to take pleasure, desire, be pleased with him. There's something that the Pharisees are disclosing here in these great messianic prophecies, and they're about to do this when he's actually showing perfected love on the ancient top. He's actually going to demonstrate this as the creator himself. And there's something that the ones who don't have eyes to see are going to mock him with. He trusted in him. They're even acknowledging you're his desire. Why doesn't he rescue him? They're so far removed from understanding this great messianic prophecy of trust. But the Pharisees, in their knowledge, realized this all came down to trust. They realized this.
And what's interesting, the Hebrew Galal here, to roll, the idea that he trusts in Yah is that Messiah has completely rolled himself into Yah. This is not just trust of, oh yeah, he trusts him. This is complete trust, as in completely giving yourself into Yah. They're acknowledging this is complete trust we're witnessing. But let's see the fulfillment of this and how they would actually mock him. Because when you understand, like, this is actually mockery beyond mockery. In Matthew 27, 40.
They're literally caught in this place because they have not gotten to a place of perfected love. It's very important that we understand these are the most knowledgeable people of the faith on the planet. They're not where Elohim is wanting them.
So also the chief priests with the scribes and elders, they mocked him, saying, he saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross or the Tav, and we will believe him. Now this is where the mockery comes in. He trusts in Elohim. They're seeing that he's trusting in Elohim. Let Elohim deliver him now if he desires him. For he said, I am the son of Elohim. What the Pharisees are essentially saying is, oh, we can see you trust in Elohim to the point you're willing to die for it. But what they're saying is, does he desire in you? That's where the
answer. They're going to get that answer 3 days later. But in this moment, they're actually saying, well, look at the one you trusted in. If you are who you say you are, why doesn't he deliver you right now if you're his so-called desire? No concept of the plan of redemption, the appointed times. No concept of this. And all the great messianic prophecies contained in the Psalms and the prophets, the plan of redemption laid out in the Torah through the appointed times. No understanding. Knowledge understanding of all these things. No eyes to see or ears to hear. They make this statement in this very moment. Love perfected being demonstrated on the ancient Tov. Their conclusion was, well, if you're telling the truth, he's going to rescue you any moment. You put your trust where you shouldn't have, Yeshua. You're a liar, Yeshua. Elohim doesn't desire you, obviously. He's not rescuing you. No concept to be able to see the very thing they were proclaiming and entrusted with to oversee in the Torah and the prophets. in the faith. If you were going to be Elohim and make an example of how blind something could be, you have to do it at this level. You don't do it at the Pilate level or the Caesar level and say, oh, look, they didn't see it. Well, of course they didn't. Elohim is making the point, the most knowledgeable didn't see it. Those that were actually charged with the one true faith did not see it. Oh, but we're all fine, aren't we? Almost 2,000 years later in the West, reading our English Bibles.
But why didn't they see it? It goes back to what we covered earlier. If you do not have the fear and reverence of Elohim in your life, you will be spiritually blind. It's not an if, that's what the word says. If we do not move past Phobos, we will not see.
Is the fruit of the Spirit the barometer of our reverence maturing? Now we just think of things we so glibly talk about. The fruit of the Spirit in Galatians. You'll know them by their fruits, the words of Messiah. It's interesting. Is it possible that the actual fruit of the Spirit, the evidence of the Spirit itself, is actually requires fear? And not the phobos fear, the reverence fear. The trust. Beware of false prophets. Now let's read this now after this series. You all know the famous passage in Matthew 7:15-17, or we should. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. They'll take. They're taking. They're not in a state to do anything else but to take. This is what a wolf does. It takes from the environment. You will recognize them by their fruits. Interesting. So what we're talking about here are the believers. What we're talking about here are those who are in charge in authority matters. You'll recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. What are we actually seeing in the fruit from the religious body today? And by the way, no one gets spared here. No one. We're all guilty before him if we're going to humbly humble ourselves in the proper reverence of Elohim. No side of the river is not guilty of this bad fruit. Those in Messianic Hebrews movies and movements and whatnot, I mean, it's terrible. So who's okay here? I can't look at the entire religious system upon the earth right now, which John marveled at witnessing. I cannot see in the entire world where there is not bad fruit concerning the true faith. So we've got a problem here, or we're really deluded. We're not the witness we should be. I'm seeing bad fruit everywhere. Everywhere. So are we this remnant that can actually humble ourselves and go, okay, not me anymore. I'm not going to be in this place. Or will we be that deluded that we're not even going to be able to understand what this actually looks like to him? We have to be honest with what we're seeing in the religious systems upon the earth right now as we come to the closure of this age and the coming of Messiah. Because apparently, if we believe the scriptures, it's bad. It actually is. In the faith, not in Rome, not the silly people doing silly things. In the faith. It goes on. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear bad fruit, good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, you will recognize them by their fruits. So the fruit of the Spirit in our lives is going to be weighed and measured against something. I'm going to suggest to you it's the covenant. We don't get to make it up now what it's weighed against. It's not our opinion, our imaginations, our religious movements, denominations, whatever it is we engaged in. He actually gave it to us right at the beginning when Phobos was being established. It's called the covenant. He gets to decide how this is weighed against. He gets to decide what the fruit looks like in our lives, not us. And we don't get to claim ignorance because he gave it right at the beginning of the establishment of the faith in the house of Israel. There's no way around this. We don't get to change what this is weighed and measured against. Goes on. Not everyone who says to me, Master, Master. How many times have we read this? We looked at this and say the kingdom of heaven, but one who does not have the will of the Father who is in heaven. Look at this. The one who is of the Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, Master, Master, did we not prophesy in your name, cast out demons in your name, do many mighty works in your name? Very clear that these are believers. Now let's look at this with a different set of eyes here. And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. I'm going to suggest to you, and here in the Greek here, the Gnosko, to learn, to know, to come to know, get a knowledge, a perceived feel, to become to know, to understand. Have knowledge of, to understand. The actual Jewish idiom here is actually denotes very graphically the sense of this knowing is sexual intercourse between a man and a woman. In fact, it's intimate. To become acquainted with. So look at this. I'll declare to them, I never had intimacy. I never knew you. I had religion with you. That's evident by what they're proclaiming before this. But there's a kingdom from heaven that is going to require this final place of perfected love. I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Yes, that can be translated, you workers of Torahlessness. But the actual inference here on intimacy, if we understand what this is pointing to, it's the covenant. They're covenantless. It's not just the Torah general, it's the desire stated in Torah, which is the covenant. This is exactly what was given to the assembly of Laodicea. He spits them out because they don't get this. How does this covenant against our lives, the covenant actually truly reflects? He's saying to them literally, you are workers without the covenant. You've got the knowledge, you've got the obedience, you've got the practice, you're casting out demons, you're doing things in my name, you're creating all your religious environments. You're doing it all. Nobody's off the hook here on either side of the river. No one. What he's actually getting at here is the desire of Elohim within the Torah. Because the reference here is intimacy. And this is only the place of perfected love. Depart from me, you workers that have no covenant on your heart. Whoa. I mean, we're heading for a heart judgment. Now, Paul said this heart judgment we're heading for, there's a confident place we can be able to approach this. And there's one that's not so confident. We better understand the difference of this because there's an intimacy here involved that involves perfected love.
You know, by the very response, Master, did we not? You're seeing Phobos. Right there, you're seeing Phobos. They're afraid of the judgment. They thought they were in for a cup of coffee and they're not. They're in for a stern word. And you're actually saying you're seeing justification. Now, I believe you're seeing Phobos at the root here. And so that means if we understand the journey of Phobos, reverence, love, perfected, they can actually have that covenant, but it's written on stone. And as Curtis said, the covenant is not written on their heart here. Again, we have said in past teaching, what is coming out of this time domain? Because flesh and blood does not inherit the kingdom. The covenant will not be on stone. It will not be written down. It will be living. And so Yeshua's statement of, you don't have the covenant written on your heart, therefore I do not know you. I cannot trust you. Again, think of the parable of the talents. You wicked, lazy, untrustworthy servant. Out you go.
A simple axiom of the human experience is you cannot trust what you don't know. It's not possible. If you put your trust in something you don't know, we're foolish. We're acting foolish. You cannot truly trust what you do not know, and that is what it is summing up. Is fear a covenant matter? You know, the first 4 parts of the covenant relate very much to where reverence is going to truly be learned. It's laid out right to the point of keeping and guarding the Sabbath. This is the place where knowing occurs. Reverence is learned. This is contained in the covenant. Here's where it gets interesting. In the final 6 parts of the matters, this is the place where trust is witnessed. Reverence is actually lived. You see, if you don't get the foundation of this right and this reverence, this isn't going to play out in our lives. Think of our own lives. Have we really honored our father and mother? Our spouses? Do we commit violence in our heart against others? Do we commit adultery in our mind? This is just all in the physical. Do we desire what other has? Have we ever taken from others? Think about all of this. This isn't just a basic checklist of exposing what we're not. This actually could be based on whether we've actually truly learned reverence and moved on from phobos and actually matured to such a place where trust is now being witnessed by Elohim in the test. What are we actually seeing here? He's delivering us not only where we learn it, where we understand it. The application of it is going to start with him and none other and no other than him and his ways and what this is about. And it's going to actually play out. We're getting an insight here possibly into the Bema Seat of Messiah. How do these matters look in our lives? We might all claim and argue about the first 4, and we're going to find out whether that was legit or not. But I'd suggest we have an insight right now, a chance to look at these final matters, these 6, based off of this reverence, and actually truly look in our life and go, and if we're failing miserably on these, maybe we might want to revisit the reverence part, the knowing part. I know what it does for me. If one of these things get exposed in my life, I better get back to repentance. I better get back to the reverence of Elohim, because this is not playing out in my life, and it is failing the test.
I hope people also understand now why John in 1 John would say what he said and what we read earlier. If you claim to love Elohim and know Elohim, but you can't love your brother who you can see, you're a liar, and the truth is not in you. John understood what we're talking. Again, he just very almost glibly says it. It was common knowledge for him. But we're having to relearn this. And hopefully people are starting to understand now that this is not just a thing of ticking your fleshly boxes and, oh, well, I'm doing it now in the physical. This is a heart matter. It begins with the heart. It ends with the heart.
Think of it now just from that basic Western mindset. Oh, love casts out all fear. And we have our definition of perfected love. Casts out all fear. This would seem like an oxymoron, the very covenant itself then. Fear is a covenant matter? See, if your definition or understanding of fear doesn't mature, you would think this was a contradiction of terms being shared with you right now. We're telling you it's not. The covenant is actually a fear of Elohim matter, but it needs to mature to the place that now reveals why they spoke about it the way they did in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. It has to mature, just like our whole physical shadow picture teaches us. Is this reverence being lived out in our lives or not? And this is only something that we can be honest with the closest that walk with us and before our Elohim as the most important. Is this actually what he's witnessing? Is he witnessing reverence in our lives? And we're getting a chance to consider these matters now. The fear of Elohim is most definitely a covenant matter, but it's for his desire. The shadow picture is the stone. What we're actually living in reverence in our lives will demonstrate that covenant, because it's on the heart. It was what it's all been screaming. The covenant in stone was not job done. That obedience will purely be a reflection of something on our heart, not the pursuit. And the only thing that gets us here, the surgeon is the Ruach. These are the ones that didn't have a form of godliness and denying the true power thereof. This hasn't got things to do with growing legs back and casting out demons and doing all the things that people were using to justify out of full boss. This is actually a place where the Ruach, we've allowed in a place of intimacy for him to do a work on our hearts. Apparently it's going to require fire. Apparently it's going to require discipleship. Apparently it's going to require us being a body, because that's the place where the Ruach works. And if we walk in the true faith, if we actually walk in the faith, this will apparently start to actually happen. Not because I willed it to, or Michael, or yourself, or anyone else. Because we actually grew to a place where we allowed the Ruach to be the surgeon. Something we actually can't manufacture. We actually can't pretend this into being. We can't knowledge it into being. We can't study it into being. We can't teach it into being. We can't tick our boxes into being this. We can't fake this. We actually have to get to a reverent enough position where we will allow the Ruach to trust him on the ancient Tav of our own life. Take up your Tav. Now it's going to make sense. Where he can literally circumcise our hearts. Do we trust him enough to circumcise our hearts? Or will we listen to religion screaming, oh, you trusted in Elohim, why has he abandoned you? And how often maybe we have thought that in the fires of our lives. The true set-apart place.
In Ezekiel 36, this is actually one of these new or renewed covenant scriptures. But having gone through what we've gone through, let's reread this. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from your uncleannesses. And from all your idols I will cleanse you. I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. Again, this is a heart matter. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. The covenant should be going from stone to the heart. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. Notice the order of this. It's not obey, then your heart will be circumcised. It's because your heart is being circumcised, the outcome of this will be obedience. As we saw in the graphic just here, if this is really written on our hearts, it will display the shadow in our lives. And Ezekiel is telling you this right here. A circumcised heart will reflect the fruit of the Spirit. Again, it's the same with the fruit of the Spirit. You don't try to have the fruit in the Spirit so that your heart is circumcised. Again, Yeshua summed it up. Clean the inside of the cup, then the outside shall be clean too. All of Scripture, all of prophecy is telling you, not only is this a heart matter, but the fear of Elohim is actually a key integral part of this. In fact, Paul would pick up on this. Again in Hebrews 10. Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Yeshua. Again, this is this reverential, love perfected ability to come before him in reverence by the new and living way, not the written way, the living way that he opened for us through the curtain, that is through his flesh. And since we have a great high priest over the house of Elohim, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Notice how Paul is alluding to the passage we've just read in Ezekiel 36 as part of this ability to come boldly before the throne. Paul is saying, look, if you're going to get anything from today, If the fear of Elohim goes from phobos to reverence to finally love perfected, that which is truly desiring for, only then can we have the reverential confidence to come before him boldly in a way that would please him.
Starting in Matthew 22, the evidence of reverence, not phobos. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him the test, "Teacher, which is the great commandment of the law, in the law?" And he said to him, "You shall love Yah, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself." This is the one you're not supposed to bear false witness against, by the way. And on these two commandments depend all of the Torah and the prophets. In other words, all of the word. There is no New Testament at this point. All of the word is dependent on this. Agape, the evidence of reverence, is actually we are not operating in phobos. And this reverence will become the ultimate fulfillment of the Shema, which is what he's relating to when we get back to Deuteronomy 6 or Devarim 6. So how glibly we quote these things or talk about these things, but really, ultimately, I believe what Messiah is doing is he is summarizing the Shema, the Torah, the desire of the covenant, everything, and he is bringing it all together in this incredible picture. And he is stating to them, if we don't mature in reverence, we won't learn the love at this level, and these things won't play out. If we stay in phobos, we're going to fall short. If we just purely stay at that point where we started at the beginning of the mountain, we must grow on. This is all Messiah is doing, and he's laying this out with them.
And so let's wrap up the teaching and the series with, what does Messiah, the bridegroom, actually desire? Genesis 4, this is the Cain and Abel. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. There you go. Murder has first occurred. The covenant is not on Cain's heart. Then Yah said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" The word there is shamar, to guard. Am I my brother's guardian? You know, because what we're seeing here, Cain did not have the reverence of Elohim or his brother. And what did it result in? The covenant not being written on Cain's heart resulted in murder. Actual physical murder, the first murder we have in the time domain. Again, think of Judas. What happened with Judas? Think of religious Paul before his Damascus Road. Think of adulterous King David, who would conspire to kill so that he could have Bathsheba and kill Uriah as part of it. Something was being exposed. Again, we started this series. If you do not have the reverence of Elohim, violence is the outcome. The fruit of the lack of the fear of Elohim is violence. Isaiah 33, 5 and 6. Yah is exalted, for he dwells on high. He will fill Zion with justice and righteousness, and he will be the stability, the emunah. He will be the faithfulness, the fidelity, the trustworthiness of your times. Abundance of salvation, wisdom, and knowledge. Look at this. The fear of Yah, the reverence of Yah is Zion's treasure. You know, Curtis speaks about where is the gold in the temple to come? Where is the gold? Could it be the fear of Yah, the reverence of Yah is the bride's treasure?
The prophets knew this. And they're stating it. This is his treasure. This is the treasure of Zion. She's actually made it. She couldn't fake it, and it required the bridegroom to help complete it.
his spirit, his desire, everything. It wasn't at her hand. It wasn't at the hand of pure obedience or seeking religious knowledge. An excellent wife who can find, the great famous proverb, far more precious than jewels, the heart of her husband trusts. Literally, the batah. So look at, what do we have here? To trust, to have confidence, to be bold, talk to you over that coffee, to be secure, to come before, understand the judgment, to make secure, to feel safe. Paul's confidence on receiving his crown was not misguided, but he had paid a great, great price and journey to get to this place. And it's not one that we should just assume and be disrespectful and find ourselves in the justifying place. But didn't we? We want to be in the place that the Apostle Paul got to, where he understood, I go to receive my crown, but not disrespectfully, not presumptuously. I've lived the maturing of reverence. I've been in Phobos. I've lived that reverence. And now I've allowed the heart circumcision, the humbling of my life, and to go through what was required to allow him to do a work on my heart. He made this statement from the place of his heart, not his knowledge. His knowledge never allowed him to make that statement. His heart cried out, I go to receive my crown. That's a place where he got to from heart circumcision. He had all the knowledge before he ever uttered those words. What was his eyes truly open to? Look at this. If he gets to the point where he can trust us, the assured scepter, she does him good, not harm, all the days of her life. We'll talk more about this next year. That is something that we would all desire. Why do we think it's strange that he does?
Psalm 115, verse 11. You who fear Yah, trust in Yah. He is their help and their shield. If you have the reverence of Elohim, trust is going to be a natural outcome of this. And as a result, if we can trust him and he can trust us, he will be our shield. Let's finish up on a nice little tidbit here. Shield in Hebrew, magen, or meginah in plural feminine, which is what it is in that psalm, because he's their shield, i.e. the bridal position. The word meginah or magen comes from the word ganan, to hedge about, to protect, to defend, to cover, to surround. Elohim giving the hedge of protection, his sukkah, around that which he loves. What's interesting, Ganan is part of the word family, gan, garden, enclosure, literally the Garden of Eden, where it all began. In Hebrew, the Garden of Eden is Gan Eden. You mean to say that we've gone right back to the beginning, and where did the time domain begin? A glorified state. But love hadn't yet been perfected. And through the fall, the test, and the growing from phobos, chatat, to reverence, that now love could be perfected. What wasn't there in the glorified state in the garden is now present in this verse. All you who fear Yah, who trust Yah, where love has been perfected, he will be their shield. And this takes us right back to the beginning. Love will be perfected.
Direct reference there now to what is the actual armor of Elohim, what actually gives us that confidence. It starts with repentance, first thing that came out of Messiah's mouth. Yes, we'll learn phobos. Through that, we will learn and walk in a place of reverence. We will humble ourselves, become kind, strong, demonstrate that humility. We'll start to be real with him and each other. And just maybe, just like the scriptures have promised, we might gain a little bit of wisdom in our life. And as a result of this, we'll be reverent. There'll be a reverency there that's not manufactured, that's not religious, that's actually occurring at the heart level. If we allow him to finish that process, we can be trusted. Trusted with what? The scepter, his dream. Most will not make it to the end of this teaching. We know that. They won't make it in their mind, in their hearts, in their patience, in their whatever. It's not meant to. This is for those who will actually have eyes to see and ears to hear. It's designed to sift the whole process. The teaching's no different. The whole fear of Elohim is designed to be a part of that fundamental principles that Elohim uses. We've taught it in such a way. Next year, we're going to go to a very interesting place with all of this. But we have to get this in play in our lives to remotely have a chance to receive and to hear other matters. So here's the question for all of us. Near time's on our doorstep. We have the coming of the fulfillment of the fall appointed times, the return of the Lion of the tribe of Yehuda. Are we trusted? Love perfected is coming. The only question is are we on the two-way part of this equation? He's done his job. And we're going to allow him to do ours. With confidence, some of us will decry, come Yeshua, Messiah. And some will be hiding themselves under the rocks. And some will be baffled, justifying themselves. But make no mistake about it. Love perfected is coming. He's coming for his bride. He will have his desire. It will happen. Far beyond all of man's religion, our efforts, our deeds, the schemes of the devil and silly people doing wicked things. Far beyond it all. He's going to get it. May we have eyes to see and ears to hear. May we have others who do that will walk with us. There are very few things that Michael and I can share that are more important than this.
Let's leave it here, eh? Amen.